First of all, the Shlit is dedicated Leilui Nishmas Shlomo Doiv,
Father of Mordechai Shapiro. Father of Mordechai Shapiro.
Shlomo Doiv ben Rav Tzaddik Mordechai, the Kaminke Koretze Rebbe. I did not know that the Mordechai Shapiro is an anicle of a Hasidic Rebbe. That's very nice to learn. So the Shlit is dedicated to Leilui Nishmosa. So the Shlit is dedicated to Leilui Nishmosa of Reb Shlomo Doiv ben Rav Tzaddik Mordechai. Should be a Meretz Yosef for the entire wonderful family. I am so happy to hear that the Mordechai Shapiro's son-in-law, Rabbi Avram Eliezer Baruch HaKoyen, is safely home from 3 months of volunteering for the war effort in Eretz Yisrael and being for 3 months in a war zone in danger. And Baruch Hashem, it's wonderful to hear that he's safely home. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bring all our soldiers safely home, l'chaim v'lesimcha v'lesholem. And the Shir is also dedicated l'refuah shalema to Netanel Yaakov ben Yehuda Sora, a young soldier that was injured a few weeks ago, and he still needs a refuah shalema. And I also want to add on another wonderful young soldier who was critically hurt, Ido ben Inebal. Kodesh Baruch Hu should send a refuah shalema to them and to all the other soldiers. I want to tell you that at the weekend, I paid a shiva call to the Schwartz family. David ben Yair used to come every Monday night together with his father, Shiabod L'chaim Tovim, to my Shiur in Haranof. He used to write every word I said. A young Talmud Chochem was killed in Gaza, left an almana and a grieving family. And I visited the Hexters. And the father of Yakir told me every Shabbos he had a chavrusa with his son, Shalos Chuvas Minchas Osher. They learned together. So many young Talmud Chochem are sacrificing their lives in this war. Halavai, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help. That it should be over and should all come safely home. So the Torah we're learning today is on one hand Le'ili Nishama, on the other hand a tefillah for refuas hacholim, and a hoidoya for the son-in-law of Reb Mordechai was Baruch Hashem safely home, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bring all the young soldiers l'chaim v'lesimcha v'lesholem. The topic we're discussing today is one of the most important mitzvahs we have, and that is the mitzvah chaviva of Tefillin. And the number writes, calls man shat Tefillin al-roisha v'al-zoye shalodam onav v'yereisha mayim. So I remember when I put on Tefillin, and my great Rebbe, the Kloisenberger Rebbe, put on my Tefillin for me on the day of my bar mitzvah. He asked me to promise him that I will never speak a dover bottle with the Tefillin. And I, up to this day, that was many years ago, and I tried to keep that promise and to be very careful never to speak dvar b'teilim with my Tefillin on. So the fundamental question, we cannot in one short shiur go through Hilchos Tefillin, goes without saying. The question is the essence of the mitzvah. Is it all day, once a day, or maybe it's not associated with days as well? And we will discuss 3 different approaches. Kosav HaShulchan Aruch Lamed Zayin Sif Beis, and that begins our source sheet. Mitzvasam leheyoisam olav kol hayoim. Mitzvah Tefillin is a person should have Tefillin kol hayoim. Aval mepnei shetzichem guf noki shelo yafiach behem v'shelo yasiach da'ato mehem ve'en kol odem yochal lizor behem nagu shelo la'anicham kol hayom u'mekol mokim tzorech kol odem lizor behem leyoisam olav b'shas kriya shema v'tefillah. I apologize for one moment, but because the telephone is ringing and it's an interference, I should think about this in advance. I'm just getting up from my seat 1 second to take the telephone out of the room. I am such an ignoramus when it comes to technology. I don't know how to silence my telephone, so I need to lock it up in another room. So the lesson of the Shulchan Aruch is Mitzvah of kol hayoim. And the reason we don't have Tefillin kol hayoim is twofold. Guf noki, hesech hadas. So the mother of Ram Siv Koten Beis declares, and if a person could be careful, Shelo yafiach, to have a guf noki, and also hesech hadas, does he have a chiyav gomer to have Tefillin kol hayoim? Mash mitzas, afilu mish yodeh sheyesh le guf noki mepnei ramoim. Ramoim means some people were dishonest in their dealings, and they pretended to be tzaddikim having tefillin all day. And therefore, even if you could be nizar, you don't need to wear tefillin all day. And this Magen Avraham is somewhat of a pele, because if we assume that it's a chiyuv min haTorah to have tefillin, wear tefillin all day, it's totally unreasonable that we're mevatel a mitzvahs asay because some dishonest people pretend to be honest by wearing tefillin all day, and would that be a sufficient reasoning to be mevatel a mitzvahs asay? Doesn't make sense. So it would seem to be obvious from the Magen Avraham that it is not a chiyuv gomer to wear tefillin all day. So let us examine what the great Achronim have to say. The Pri Megadim, Eshel Avraham, and the Magen Avraham we just mentioned, Siv Koten Beis. Mesupek ani min haTorah chayav kol hayoim b'tefillin, o min haTorah dai b'rega echad shemaniach u'midrabanan kol hayoim. ובתלו עכשיו שאין לנו גוף נקי. So the Pri Megadim is mesupek. Is it a chiyuv d'oraisa all day, or min haTorah once a day, and midrabanan all day? And because of guf noki and hesech hadas, we're mevatel derabanan. And he wants to prove from the levush that min haTorah person needs tefillin all day, but he contemplates based on the Rambam. Soon we will examine the lashon of the Rambam. But as of now, the Levush maintains min haTorah you need to wear tefillin all day. Pri Megadim is not convinced, and he says maybe it's only the Rabbanan all day. And this brings us to the Yeshuas Yankov. Yeshuas Yankov was a contemporary of the Pri Megadim. It's a gewaldige sefer. And the Yeshuas Yankov wonders if it would be a chiyuv d'Rabbanan to wear tefillin all day. Hesech hadas is not a chiyuv d'oraisa. Even guf noki might be a d'Rabbanan. So how are we mevatel a mitzvah d'oraisa because of d'Rabbanans? And the Magen Avraham definitely doesn't make sense that we're mevatel a mitzvah d'oraisa mechashash ramoim. Yeshuas Yankov writes, Ro'isi chasidim va'anshe ma'aseh she'ena masira matfilin kol hayoim. I have seen chasidim v'anshe ma'aseh wear tefillin all day, but we ain't biyodeinu l'kayim mitzvahs kitakonom. And he finishes his discussion with a tefillah. Hashem yosem me'oleinu terdes asman va'oila siveloi v'niska l'kayim mitzvosoi v'yita b'libenu avosoi v'yorosoi. To me, it's a shtickle pella that the Mishnah Brura quotes the Yeshuas Yankov, that the Yeshuas Yankov maintains tzechiyuv kol hayoim. No, I think his conclusion is the other way. It's not a chiyuv all day, not a chiyuv d'oraisa all day. He writes Chasidim Yanshe Ma'aseh, but that's not our meaning. And I must say, I have had great Rabbeim And I was Mishamish Gedali, so none of them that I know wore tefillin all day. None of them. And today there are more and more youngsters that wear tefillin all day. Mm-hmm. So on one hand, Baruch Hashem, this is an age, this is a doyer of machmirim. On the other hand, I don't know, I'm not so convinced that we are better than our avos. Kloisenberger Rebbe was a malach. He didn't wear tefillin all day. But Moshe Feinstein, there's so many gedolim that I came to know, and it was mishamish, and none of the great gedolim I know wore tefillin all day. So we need to understand, if it's a chiyuv d'oraisa, why not? And even if it's a chiyuv d'rabbanan, why shouldn't we l'choyre be machmir? So let's examine the lashon of the Rambam. Perek Daled halacha chofei. So what we have up to this point in our discussion, up to this point, is the lavush all day. Prima Godem is mesupik. Bi'alocha, Yeshua's Yankov are not definitive. They bring two possibilities. Bi'alocha calls Yeshua's Yankov as maintaining all day. I think Yeshua's Yankov to the contrary. Mashma Medvorov, it's not a chiyuv d'oraisa. The Rambam is the most important. He's the king. Perek Daled halacha chofei. Kedushas tefillin kedushosan gedoyleu hi. שכל זמן שהתפילין בראשו של אדם ועל זוהי עונה וירא שמיים ואינו נמשך בשחוק ובשיחה בתהילה ואינו מהר מחשבת רויס אלא מפנה ליבו בדברי האמת והצדק. לפיכך צורך אדם להשתדל ליועסן עליו כל היום שמצווסן ככי. אמרו עליו הרב תלמידו של רבנו הקודש שכל יום אבל לא יראו שולח אדם בלי תורה בלי צידס או בלי תפילין. What do we learn from this Rambam? To me, it seems to be so clear that the Rambam maintains it is not a chiyuv kol hayom. Let's have a look at Halacha Chavav. Afar pisha mitzvosan lelavshin kol hayom. B'shas tefillah yoisem ha'akol. Omre chachomim kol hakorek kriyah ma'abar tefillin kila ma'iden sheka b'yatzmoi. V'kol shana maniach tefillin oive b'shmoy na'esen. If it's a chiyuv gomer kol hayom, it's strange to me. B'shas tefillah yoisa kol hakorek kriyah ma'abar tefillin ma'iden sheka b'yatzmoi. That is somewhat anagadata. If it's a chiyuv d'oraisa kol hayom, what could be more than a mitzvah say d'oraisa? So I think, if the Rambam writes, let's go back to halacha chofei, kedushas hatefillin gedoyli. Kol zman shatefillin al roisha shel adam v'al zloya ona v'yarei shamayim ein nimshach b'schok sicha b'teilah. And that is why it's not because it's a chiyuv d'oraisa, only because of the zgula in tefillin and the kedusha of tefillin, and only because the tefillin will bring him closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Lefichach tzorach adam l'shtadel yosin olav kol hayom, and the lashon of the Rambam is lehishtadel. It's only hishtadlus. So I think this Rambam clearly says it is not a chiyuv mitzvah say to have tefillin kol hayom. I don't see how anybody could have any mistake in this Rambam. But on the other hand, shemitzvah son kachi. How do we understand these three words, shemitzvah son kachi? So I could understand why the Rambam caused confusion. And maybe some Achonim understood from the Rambam, it is a chiyuv kol hayom shemitzvah son kachi. So let me at this stage share with you my understanding. And I will bring 4 sources. And what I say now is a big chiddush. And I'm aware that it's a big chiddush, but I'm not afraid to say chiddushim.
Well,
I don't go against gedolei haposkim halacha l'maisa. But when we're not dealing halacha lamaisa, nit nereshus. And what I say is not fitting with the opinion of all the poskim, but primarily the Rambam and some other great Rishonim. Mitzvah Tefillin is not at all defined and confined in Zman. It's not a chiyuv gomer to wear Tefillin all day. Maybe it's not even a chiyuv gomer to wear Tefillin once a day. There are some mitzvahs that are lamala min hazman. Kodesh Baruch Hu says, this is a wonderful mitzvah. Take advantage. Be mekayim the mitzvah as much as you can. And sometimes the most important and fundamental mitzvahs are not confined in Zman. The most striking example would be Talmud Torah. How much does a person need to learn Torah? I think we spoke about mitzvahs Talmud Torah a long time ago, one of the first Shiur. In my Sforim, I discussed the mitzvahs of Talmud Torah many times. And I brought what seems to be a stira. On one hand, Reb Shimon bar Yochai says in Brochas Lamed all day and all night. V'ogisa b'yom v'layla. Same Reb Shimon bar Yochai, Menachem Tzadik Tesam in the base, quoted by Reb Yochanan. Kriya Shema Shachras V'Avis Yomakayim, that very same pasuk v'ogisa b'yom v'layla. So on our source sheet, we have about 5 or 6 sources about mitzvahs Talmud Torah. But I'm just mentioning mitzvahs Talmud Torah as an example, and therefore I won't go through all the sources. I leave it up to you to be mashlim. But what I mean to say is, mitzvahs Talmud Torah keneged kulam is the greatest mitzvah. And after Piken, it is not confined in time. Hundreds of times I told a beautiful story. Rav Henkel was masped the Chazon Ish. I love this story, and I told it many times. Many of you heard it from me already. So Rav Henken, when he was masped the Chazon Ish, said, I first met the Chazon Ish in a new town in Russia named Stoivzi. I came to the Rav Sorotskin was his name. And as I walk in, a young man walks out. I asked him, who are you? He says, my father is the Rav of Kosovo. What do? We run a shop. He said, we run a shop, because the wife of the Chazon Ish worked in a shop. I asked him, do you learn? And he says, when I have time, I learn. Obviously, he had a lot of time. I asked him, what are you doing by the Rav? The Rav called. When the Rav calls, you come. And Rav Engen says, then I walked into the Rav. I asked him, who is this young man that just walked out? And the Rav told me, you don't know Rav from Yeshaya? He's going to be the Gadol Hador in a few years. Why did he come to the Rav? I need to leave town for a medical procedure. I need to go through surgery, and asked him to be my Mamala Mokan. So this is a beautiful story about the Anova of the Chazon Ish and his Chachma. And I love this Hagdorah. Benachod Zeit Leranich. I learn when I have time. And I say, that is the exact definition, Hagdorah of mitzvahs Talmud Torah. Learn when you have time. But be careful to have time, and don't dare to say you don't have time. So mitzvahs Talmud Torah has no Hagdorah in Zman. Yes, Shulchan Aruch Reish Manvav writes, you need to learn every day and every night, but that is only Midivrei Kabbalah. V'ogisa b'yom v'layla is Perek Aleph and Sefer Yoshua, first Perek of Nevi'im Rishonim. It's not Torah's Moshe, it's not a Diurais. So mitzvahs Talmud Torah Min Torah is not confined in time. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Kindalach, this is the greatest mitzvah, the most beautiful mitzvah. Be careful to cherish this mitzvah and learn whenever you have time. In my opinion, the same regarding Tefillin. Tefillin is not confined in Zman. However, because of Rambam, Kedushas at Tefillin, Kedushos and Gedoylo. As long as you wear Tefillin, you're an honor. Yerei Shamayim. You're not going to be oisik and schoik v'sicha b'teila. It brings you closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ulefichach tzorach odem leshtad leyosen olav kol hayoyim. And what does it mean, Shemitzvosam Kachi? The mitzvah min Torah is lehishtadel shiur of kol hayom, just like mitzvah Talmud Torah is lehishtadel lilmod kol hayom. So Talmud Torah is lehishtadel lilmod kol hayom. Tefillin is lehishtadel yosen olav kol hayom. That is my clear understanding in Shittas HaRambam. Could we move over to Masechet Chulin Kuf Yud Amud Aleph? I think we have it on our sheet. Gemara Kuf Yud Amud Aleph in Masechet Chulin. Choyle me'ayim Peturim min hatfilin. Very short Gemara. Rashi, mepnei shetzorach lechaltzom todio. What's the problem? Person has diarrhea. Put them in a tefillin. And the lashon in the Gemara is mashma. Put them in a tefillin entirely. Some achronim, because they maintain there's a chiyuv to put on tefillin at least once a day. So they say, pshat, put them in a tefillin, kol hayom. But your armachu, you have to put it on for a moment. That's not mashma in the Gemara. Also not in the Rambam. The Rambam writes, Perik Daled Halacha Yud Gimel Choy Lamayim v'kol mi shelo yochol lishmar es nakova ve'lo b'tzar put them in a tefillin. Yochol lishmar nakova, but b'tzar. Rashi writes, what's the tzar? And it's to take on, off all day. So it's a Terchi Yisera. So the Aruch HaShulchan struggles with this Gemara. And he says, so why doesn't he need to put it on at least for a moment? And the Aruch HaShulchan says he does. But that's against the Lashon of the Rambam, against the Lashon of the Gemara. So what I prove from this Gemara, and Rashi and the Rambam Nishitosoi, Tefillin is not a chiyuv. The chiyuv Tefillin is lehishtadel. And if it incurs tzar and suffering, you're potter. And therefore, Choy Lamayim is entirely potter min tefillin. Upashtas Loshen Rambam, Gemara, and even Shulchan Aruch is potter. None of them say you need to put on your tefillin at least for a moment. Sheyochol lishmor nikavov. No. So this also proves what I said before. Sukkah Chav Hey, which is another Gemara. And I think that Gemara proves the same. So where do we have it on our sheet? We need to go down. Here we are. Chason v'ashashvinen v'chol b'nei achupa p'tura min ha'tefillin min ha'tefillin v'ashi min ha'tefillin mishum d'shchicha shichus v'kalas loish. So why wouldn't we say you're all mechuyev in tefillin, at least for a moment, before you drink, before you play around? Mishum d'shchicha shichus v'kalas loish, where mevatel mitzvah say diuraisa. Does that make sense? Mishum d'shchicha shichrus v'kalas lush, you're mevatel and mitzvah say diuraisa. So I think Rashi l'shitosai. We had two Rambams, now we have two Rashis. Because mitzvah tefillin is not a chiyuv gomor. The chiyuv is hishtadlus. It's kedai. Take advantage of this wonderful mitzvah. And if you don't, you will be punished. Like Talmud Torah. The same regarding tefillin. Rosh Hashanah Daf Yud Zayin, a very famous Gemara. Karkafte de lo manach tefillin. Is Poishe Yisrael begufon. An amazing Tosfos. Im oisig b'Torah k'men yach tefillin dami. The Omer b'mechil to oisig b'Torah potem min ha'tefillin. Pil'ei plaot. Our meaning is not according to Tosfos and the Mechilta. but it's an amazing halacha. If you learn Torah, you put them in a tefillin. If you learn Torah, you're not exempt from any other mitzvah. In Moed Koten Daftes, the Gemara says, Kol mitzvah she'i efshar la'asoisa al yedei acherem, doich talmid Torah. Tefillin is a chiyuv on every individual. So why would tefillin be the only mitzvah? Oisig b'Torah potam tefillin. The Ritva gives two different pshatim, two different interpretations. Let's learn the Ritva. Yes, oimrim shemezeh ha'tamam v'hu oisig b'Torah potam tefillin mipnei shesh lo hesach hadas kisho oisig b'Torah v'yefshar ha'kayim shtayim. אף על פי שאין הסך הדס נויפל בעניין זה, כיוון שאין דעתו על דבורם של חויל, וכדברירנו במסכת סוכה, ולפיכך מותר לעסק בתורה ולהתפלל ותפילין בראשון, בכל מקום אין מקיים את התפילין כראוי, שפעמים שמסיח דעתו לדברי חויל. So the Ritva says, עסק בתורה פוטם לתפילין because it's מסיח דעת. But it is clear, says the Ritva, that is not the Isra of Hesach Hadas. We daven in Tefillin. We recite Kriya Shema in Tefillin. When you daven, when you say Kriya Shema, you need to be mechav in Tefillin b'Kriya Shema. So the same would be Talmud Torah. The Isra of Hesach Hadas is only Hesach Hadas b'divrei Chulin, not b'divrei Kedusha. But then it writes, sometimes he will be Misiach Das b'divrei Chayil. Does that make sense? That is why he's put up in a mitzvah deal, right? Biyushalmi nasnita machar. Lamanti etoris Hashem beficho. By mitzvahs tefillin state lamanti etoris Hashem beficho. And that is why he's put them in a tefillin. Oh, that's a different story. But this is clearly an asmachta, not a gzeras hakosov. So I think this once again proves this shitta. Ein halacha k'moisoi, but it's a shitta nechbedes. Mechilta, quoted in Tosfos and the Ritva. So I once again say, this l'cha'oira proves tefillin is different than lulav, sukkah, tefillah, matzah, moror. All these mitzvahs are a chiyuv gomer in a certain time frame. Tefillin is more similar to Talmud Torah. Is there any other mitzvah of this nature? Yes, there is. Schiras Maaseh Amalek. Schiras Maaseh Amalek. Schiras Maaseh Amalek. Min Torah has no time frame. Lo tishkach. Lo tishkach. Zocher es asher osa lacho Amalek b'derech b'tzeischo me'Mitzrayim. So we read Parshas Amalek for Purim, Parshas Zocher, Shabbos Parshas Zocher, but that's only Midrabanan, like all the other dinim of Kriyas Torah. Min Torah, you need to remember from time to time, prevent forgetting. So there are mitzvahs that are lamalo min hazman, tefillin, according to all the sources we brought as one of them. Do we have the tshuva of tzafnas paneach in our sheet? I think we do. Shanas tshuva tzafnas paneach. We need to scroll down a bit. Here we are. One more. Tzafnas paneach simen kuf. Short introduction. The tzafnas paneach is the Raga Chavar, Rabbi Yosef Rosen. He was unique. Pre-Holocaust, Lithuania. He was the Rav of a Hasidic shtibel in Dvinsk, together with the Or Sameach. They were perhaps the two greatest gedolim of that period. And this little town of Dvinsk had a schus to host two giants. The Tzafnas Paneach was a whirlwind a hurricane, a tsunami. It was the biggest ilui in generations. Lo yordu chachamim l'sav da'atoi. And that is why it's difficult to define him as a major posek. His derech halimud was so different. And as volatile the Tzafnas B'nei was, Rameh Simcha was a symbol of calm and serenity and Yeshuv Adas. These two Gedolim were total contrast. Usually they got along well. Sometimes there was friction. So the Tzafnas B'nei totally disregards anybody that came before him. Since Chassimas HaTalmud, let's have a look at this short tshuva. Begeder tefillin b'yom tev sheni, kvar dosu b'tzeh. Hu emes devadei tzorach laniach tefillin. Hu be'emes lo metzina b'shum mokum b'shas v'Yerushalmi ga b'yom tev sheni laniach tefillin nedidam. Tzafnas B'nei writes, Milta de pshita, lule apoiskim tzorach laniach tefillin, yom tev sheni shel goliyos. Did you ever hear of anyone in Chutz La'aretz putting on tefillin yom tev sheni shel goliyos? No one. And anybody that will put on tefillin yom tev sheni shel goliyos, einoi elo min hamatmim. Tshuvas Rashba clearly says differently. One down. Le'enin yom tev sheni shel goliyos el afilu shel Rosh Hashanah she'al tukim itzoso k'choy legabe meis. Ma'u benoches tefillin mi'amrin anose diuraisa u'mevato derabanan. Yom tev sheni is derabanan, tefillin is diuraisa. Tshuva, osor betfillin, kaimanon commando met tefillin mitzvah shazman groma, v'mischa benochazam m'shem mitzvah Shabbos Yom Tov, oyo mishabel toisa. And call the tikkun rabbanan ken diuraisa tikkun. So the Tzafnas B'nei goes against the Rashba. Goes without saying. To us, the Rashba comes before the Tzafnas B'nei. But the question is, why isn't the Tzafnas B'nei right? Yom Tev Sheni Shel Goliyos is only a Derabanan. Some say it's a minhag. If there would be a chiyuv tefillin, a chiyuv diuraisa b'kol yom, how could a Derabanan override a diuraisa? Chachamim hamidu devreim b'mokem koros, but we don't find an explicit takona, takonas chachamim lo lahaniach tefillin. So according to my understanding, if tefillin would be a chiyuv kol hayom, or even once a day, we should be putting on tefillin yom tev sheni shel goliyos. But because tefillin is not a chiyuv associated with a day, and therefore, yom tev sheni shel goliyos, we have all the dinam of yom tev. You don't put on tefillin. As simple as that. So before we move, let's have some other sources. The most shocking, Tshuvas Maharik, towards the end of our source sheet. And the Maharik brings us back to Tosfos, Oiseg b'Torah poter min hatefillin. So the beginning of this discussion is about exactly where to put on tefillin, which part of your forehead. O idoli, the last two lines of this paragraph. O idoli edim ne'emonim. Tosfos Rabbi Yehuda me Paris. Rabbi Sharam Mekutzi Baal Hasmad. שכספו בפרק באמת תומלן וזה לשיינו. תימה, עמי סמכו בעולם שלא נהגו להניח תפילין. In their days of the Bali Tosfos, most people didn't put on tefillin. Most people just didn't put on tefillin every day. ואוי, כי אמרינם בפרק המדרשון, הפויש יסול בגופן, ככפת דולמנך תפילין. מיהו? רבנו תם מפרש עושה זהו הבויד במצווה. Only if he is mezalzel in tefillin. But it doesn't mean you need to put on tefillin every day. מיהו? סוים חמונו על הפסיקתא שאוים על המנתי יסר ושם בפיחו כל הקורא בתורה כאילו מניח תפילין. Like we find in Tosfos. אמנם שמעתי שגוירס איפכה. כל המניח תפילין כאילו קורא בתורה. צורך עיון שם. So, this is a shocking fact. Most people in their days did not put on tefillin. Let's skip 2 or 3 lines. Mordechai. Kosev Mordechai harelach behedi de chiyuvesed de tefillin. Kolish tuva liyarei shamayim de koravetona biuraisa. Person that is learned, he learns, put him on tefillin. According to some Rishonim, tefillin was primarily for Amei Oretz that didn't learn, but learned people that dedicated their lives to learning didn't put on tefillin, which is a total shock to us. Ve'im omeras maglu milta b'shittas rabbi ein kam tei meklal. Ve'af al gav shu yoser es rabbi v'yadayim rofes chozok laniach tefillin kasher herech sham b'drosho isa. ויאהבתו זה להמון, זה לא יגורס ביורייסה, אבל ירא השם, דגרסן וקורא ביורייסה, איקל המיימר, דמפטרה בכך, the potter from Tefillin. So these are sources which most people would be shocked to learn. There were days in the time of the Rishonim in which the Talmidei Chacham didn't put on Tefillin, they learned Torah instead. And the ignorance, they were the ones that needed to put on tefillin. So this once again proves there is no chiyuv mitzvah to say the oraisa only for simpletons.
Weiss
and a potter for the mitzvah. So all these sources to me boil down to one conclusion. Tefillin is a mitzvah chashuva. Why is it so important? Because of a Rambam. Kol zman she'atefillin b'roisha shelo levazoyu onov v'yirei shamayim, and he stays away from schoik v'kalas rosh. So Talmidei Chachamim and tzaddikim that learn all day don't really need tefillin that much, because without tefillin they're anovim and yirei shamayim and mefana libom ledivrei emes v'tzedek. They're learning Torah all day. So, before we end the shiur, let me make something clear. Chas v'cholila, I'm not mezalzel in tefillin. I'm not insane. But we're learning halacha. There is a huge opinion in the Rishonim, which to me is clear as daylight. The Shitosam, tefillin is not confined in Zman. And it doesn't mean it's not important, maybe because it is so important. Just like Talmud Torah. Talmud Torah is lemala min hazman. The mitzvah of Talmud Torah is, Kadosh Baruch Hu says, Kinderlach, I want you to appreciate my precious Torah. When you have time, learn. And oilechem, if you'll be mezalzel in Torah. We're not allowed to be mezalzel in tefillin. But tefillin is not confined in time. And that is Rambam, Rashi, Tosfos, and all the Rishonim quoted in Shuvas Ma'arik, which is amazing. Before we end the shiur, I want to make it an about face, a reverse. And I want to explain those achronim that we had at the beginning of our shiur that maintain once a day. And that is also the Kesef Mishnah, Perikei Miyasoidei HaTorah. Once a day. So the Kesef Mishnah about the story in Shabbos, Elisha Bal Knafayim. He saw the cops coming after him. He took off his tefillin and he had a miracle. He opened his hands and there was a Yoina Balas Knafayim. Kesef Mishnah says, he was already a Makayim Tefillin in that day. So we learn from the Kesef Mishnah every day. And then the big question is, how do we know every day? The pasuk doesn't refer to days. I think some time ago, I gave you a very fundamental shiur, and I spoke about mitzvah's tefillah. And I explained that Rambam writes, mitzvah's tefillah is every day. In the Protei HaMitzvahs, the beginning of Hilchos Tefillah, he also writes that Berachos Koyanim is every day. I think I saw on our source the Kesef Mishnah and the Lechem Mishnah in the beginning of Hilchos Tefillah. We have it on the screen, Ma'atoiv, but if not, I'll just explain. The Rambam writes, "Min Torah chayav gam lesparal b'kol yoyim."
We have it. The Rebbe would like to wait a second. We'll get it on.
Okay. So the Lechem Mishnah writes, the Porach says, "Ubereches lach machol ve'es meimecho." So just like Lechem and Mayim is every day, La'avdei b'chol v'avchem will also be every day. Here we have the Rambam. Mitzvahs aseh lesparal b'kol yoyim, shenemar v'avadas Hashem elokechem. Mapi yashmi'u lamdu shavodah zui tefilot. But how do you know every day? Protei HaMitzvahs, tefillah v'berachos kohanim, yesh b'chlolam shtei mitzvahs aseh, achas la'avadas Hashem b'kol yoyim b'tefillah, shniu lavorach kanam esisur b'kol yoyim. Neither in both of these mitzvahs, don't we find in the Torah b'kol yoyim? Comes along the Lechem Mishnah. Menayin lo mikran dava b'kol yoyim. Ba'al kiri sefer kozetaz shom l'su v'vaz Hashem elokechem ve'en avodah tefillah. U'b'sefer dekroima u'berachas lachmoch u'b'smemecho. Lechem v'mayim tzorach b'kol yoyim. Yom ken tefillah gam kam b'kol yoyim. Strange. This is the type of drasha we expect Chazal to say. Not the Rambam on his own, without any source in the Gemara. Let's scroll down to the Kesef Mishnah. Kesef Mishnah suggests a different pshat. So the Kesef Mishnah says, down. Here we are. Das Rabbeinu shemitzvah seles bala b'kol yoyim. Avodah zot shora b'kol yoyim. Shem eina b'kol yoyim, ulai nova Elohim eshu pam achas b'kol yomav. V'zeh mamash shelo yizbelu adas. V'yem ken hakocha chivris bala b'kol yoyim. So the Kesef Mishnah seems to suggest a process of elimination. If not b'kol yoyim, then when? Once a life doesn't make sense. So let me suggest something. And once again, I apologize at the beginning of this year. Sometimes I say amazing chidushim, and sometimes I wonder, to me, it seems so pushit, and I wonder why doesn't everybody say it? Why did it need to wait till me? Lani is daiti. All the mitzvahs say belong into one of two categories. There are mitzvahs that are essentially avodah sukkah, the essence of avodah Hashem. Like Tefillah and Kriya Shema and Tefillin, all the mitzvahs of Chag and Moedim. And there are many other mitzvahs that are all about the result, about the outcome, about the Poyon Yoitz. You need to build a Maikah, nobody should fall off the roof. You need to do Bia Chometz because you shouldn't have Chometz on Pesach. And so many other mitzvahs. I have realized all the mitzvahs of Seder Hayom, Chag, and B'Moed are essentially avodas sukkah.
Are what?
Essentially avodas Elokim.
Uh-huh.
Every day, davening, Kriya Shema, tzitzis, Tefillin, all the mitzvahs Shabbos Hamoed, Kiddush V'Avdolah, Sukkah V'Lulav, Matzah V'Moror, all the other mitzvahs in Torah are all about the result. All of them. And it goes the other way around. Any mitzvah we find in Torah's Moshe that is purely avodas Hashem, by its very nature, belongs to Seder Hayom, unless it's associated with Shabbos and Yom Tov. Because Seder hayoim shel Adam Yisrael. The routine of a Jew should be a routine of avodas Hashem. That is the reason we live. That is the reason HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world and created us. Avodas Elokim. And therefore, kol mitzvahs HaTorah that are not about the result, but essentially avodas Ukel, goes without saying that these are mitzvahs of Seder hayoim, unless they're associated with Shabbos and Yom Tov. And this assumption is so poshut, nobody needs to say it. And that is why the Rambam, Pshit alei, Tefillis b'kol yoim, Birchas Koyanim b'kol yoim. How could it be different? And to me, this is the Yesod poshut. And this will explain all the Achronim, that Tefillin is b'kol yoim, Pa'amachas b'yoim, not kol yoim, but Pa'amachas b'yoim.
Yeah.
So even though I myself, at great length, proved from many sources that Tefillin is not necessarily confined to every day. However, I also wish to explain these great Achronim, and their opinion is Pa'amachas b'yoim. And it makes so much sense to me, like Tefillah, like Birchas Koyanim. Kriya Shema is an exception because Kriya Shema is Pamayim, B'shoch v'chov kamecho, and that's why the Torah needs to say B'shoch v'chov kamecho. And to me, the Pnei Yeshua has such tremendous appeal when he writes in Brochas Chavav, Men HaTorah Talmud Torah Pa'amachas b'yoim. No other source besides the Pnei Yeshua, but I'm willing to sign off on that Pnei Yeshua. Talmud Torah Pa'amachas b'yoim. Medivrei Kabbalah Boike ve'erev, Yoimam v'laylo, but that's only Medivrei Kabbalah. Sefer Yoshua. Men HaTorah, once a day. You need to learn Torah every day. So that is my opinion. So Rabbi say, I think today we had an amazing shiur. At least to me it seems amazing, and I hope to you as well, with a lot of Yesodis and a lot of Kedushim. So next time you put on Tefillin tomorrow morning, remember the Rambam. Kol zman shatfillin al roisha shalodem v'al zloye onev v'yarei shamayim umefana libo min haschoik, and from dvorim betelim, and he only thinks about divrei emes v'hatzedek, and appreciate your wonderful tefillin. Kol tov, Rabbi say.